Didn't care for the lift, and the lift didn't care for rank and file. But eventually, my brother and I, Javier, after I left rank and file, decided that we would start a band together. I remember I left rank and file when I was on tour with them and Lone Justice, a band called Lone Justice. And Lone Justice was starting to blow up, and the brothers Kinman were getting a little nervous because they were opening up for us and they were blowing us away pretty much. So I left the band at that point, and I called my brother Javier, who was living in Hollywood. He was working in a restaurant. I was staying at the Tropicana, famous Hollywood rock and roll hotel. And the only other people that were staying with me there, hanging out with me, was UB40. And the Leroy brothers were there to record their first record with Craig Leon. You know? So I remember Steve Dorr and I were friends, and UB40 were really cool. We were all hanging out together. You know, the brothers and Slim had left and gone elsewhere. And Steve was very encouraging. He said, "You got to start a band, man. You got to go back," because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I called my brother Javier, and we decided that we would start a band called the True Believers. You know? And it took him about a year to finally get to Austin. I'll never forget, I picked him up at the Greyhound station that was over down the street, you know. And all he had was, he had his guitar in a paper bag and a paper bag full of clothes, you know. And we started to form this band with Denny DeGorio. He was a wonderful bass player, a wonderful friend from San Francisco. And Keith Carnes, who was a drummer. And we played as a four-piece for quite a while. Then we went to LA. Javier and I got convinced that we should go to LA and record a demo for CBS Records, right? And we left the rhythm section behind, which was a sin, actually. You know? And I'll forever pay for that sin, I think. You know? We went, and it was absolutely horrible, you know, and we got dropped right away. You know, we didn't even get signed, but we got dropped. And so on the way home, I told Javier that I knew of a guitar player that might be cool to join our band, you know. And he said, "Who?" I said, "John D. Graham. He's a really cool guy, and you know, he's a great guitar player." And I remember John and I were rehearsing at Club Foot. There was a rehearsal down the basement. And he asked me what I was doing. I said, "I'm starting a band called the True Believers." He goes, "What's it like?" I go, "It's a rock and roll band." And he says, "It's cool, you know, sounds great." But what I did was I lied to John D. And I told him that we had a big record deal and we were going to become very rich and famous. You know? And then I lied to Ray Washam, who was in the Big Boys, and I also told him that we would be very rich and famous one day. We all played together. And we began that band, and it was a monster of a band. You know, it was John D., Javier, myself, Denny, and Ray Washam. And we toured with Los Lobos. We were like Los Lobos' little brother band when How Will the Wolves Arrive, and those records were blowing up, you know. And John D. and I were roommates on the road. We knew where all the bodies were buried, you know. We loved each other. We hated each other. We had each other's back, and eventually became our own worst enemies, I think, sometimes, you know. The band fell apart miserably, and John D. and I tried to keep it going with a band called the Make Believers. We were an acoustic band. Javier wouldn't pay, you know, it's funny, we had a gig at the Cactus, and Javier at that time was kind of joining in a little bit, but he didn't come to the gig, you know, he just came to the sound check because he didn't want to play acoustic guitar in front of people. He was adamant about being a rock and roll star. You know? But John and I toured together, we did a lot together. When I finally came out of Hep C, he joined my band, and we spent a lot of time together. And it was a complicated relationship, but one that I'll treasure for the rest of my life. You know, he was a beautiful guy, and I really, really think he was so talented. You know? So this song that we're going to play has nothing to do with those stories. I'm sorry. But
Thank you.
it seems like we're at home, you know, and I can tell you these things, you know. So here's what I'll tell you about this next song. We've been in the studio and we just finished a new record, which is called My Ego Broke My Fall, is the title of that record. And we made it with Charlie Sexton and Britt Daniel producing and spooning. And we made a really cool record. I'm very, very proud of what we did. And we're gonna play a song from that record right now for you, you know, and it's called Candy Colored Persuasion.